To talk a little bit more about what we should be expecting from COP27, I'm joined by Pierre Cannet, spokesperson for WWF in France. Thank you very much for being on the program here today. Again, as I said, geopolitical tensions happening now amid COP27. How confident are you that those tensions will not get in the way of climate progress?
In the context of climate emergency and climate crisis, we are specifically here for the first time with all nations together to speak about this clear crisis that is doubled by other crises all around the world. We think of droughts, heat waves, and the impacts of the crisis, the energy crisis. So actually, I think head of states and governments who will speak today will need to understand that there is a response to it, which is the ecological transition. Why do we have together today this climate crisis, this energy crisis? It's our dependency on a non-sustainable production and consumption model that needs to be changed. And this is specifically the discussion to have today. How do we fix also the problems in developing countries related to climate crisis and adaptation? These are the finance that will need to be mobilized also at this COP to give some confidence to the poorest and most vulnerable countries, that richest countries and nations are here to support also these communities and people that are just now threatened by the impacts of climate change. So this is actually the conference of our time. This is a conference where these challenges need to be solved together, but it needs to be done now, because if we delay the actions within 5 to 10 years, it's not going to be enough, and we will have deepening effects more than today.
You mentioned this thorny question of climate reparations. It will take center stage here at COP27, this question of loss and damage. Historically, the US and the EU have been one of the main blockers. But now, for the first time in the history of UN climate summits, loss and damage is an official item on the agenda. Do you think developed nations and developing countries will meet halfway?
This is very important, because we are now speaking of countries or communities that will definitely be threatened by climate change. You have some territories that will be directly threatened and disappear from the maps. So the issue here to be discussed at this COP is whether or not we'll have a bold decisions on loss and damage. The fact it is on an agenda, we will not celebrate this. We need to discuss that. It needs to be on the agenda. But now we need a decision, and we still have uncertainty on the way that richest nations will address it. We have a signal sent by the French president today that France will support fundings and finance on loss and damage. But this needs to be translated concretely in the agreements at this COP.
Pierre Cannet, spokesperson for WWF France, thank you very much for being on the program. We'll be following all the latest developments from Sharm el-Sheikh here, and one of the most highly anticipated speeches of the afternoon will be by Pakistani Prime Minister Sharif, who will confront wealthy nations on their role in the climate crisis.
Valerie, thanks so much for that. And we'll be checking back in with you throughout the day here on France 24. That's our Valerie DeKimpe, Environment Editor, reporting from the climate conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt.